It was raining the day she was born. Not just any rain, an angry, roaring storm that painted the sky with lightning and shook the ground with thunder. As the winds howled through the walls of the small house deep in Color District 6, a newborn's cry pierced the night, but wasn't met with joy. It was met with silence. "She's not orange," her mother whispered, staring down at the baby wrapped in a blanket of misty rainbow light. Her father stepped forward, eyes wide. That can't be our child." But she was. Her skin shimmered faintly like oil on water, constantly shifting in hues: red, green, violet, gold, a living prism. A miracle to some, but not to them. "We've always been a proud orange family," her father muttered. This is unnatural. "She'll never belong," her mother added, clutching her husband's hand as if the baby were some uninvited force. And so by morning, the child was left on the stone steps of a towering building at the edge of the city. There was no note, only a whisper from the wind. We had a normal daughter in mind. The building was a school, not the kind that nurtures or embraces. It was cold, brutal, efficient. The headmaster stood over the swaddled child, frowning at the pulsing light radiating from her tiny face. "She'll be trouble," he muttered. They named her Rainbow because none of the staff could agree on a proper color classification. She didn't match any student file. No family claimed her. She was placed in the miscellaneous ward. From the beginning, Rainbow stood out, in a bad way. Other kids whispered, teachers avoided eye contact. The cafeteria gave her gray leftovers, claiming bright food might react with her. She learned to sit quietly, speak softly, hide her shine. But no matter how hard she tried, her colors always came back. And that terrified them. One winter night, Rainbow's stomach growled louder than usual. She hadn't eaten all day. She tiptoed into the kitchen while the staff snored in their dorms. She opened the cooler, her fingers wrapped around an apple. The lights snapped on. "What do you think you're doing?" barked the night custodian. By morning, the entire school knew. She was forced to wear a sign around her neck that read "Thief of Color and Food," and kneel in the courtyard as students laughed and threw scraps at her. "I just wanted to eat," she whispered. The headmaster loomed above her. "Some things don't belong in the system. You're one of them." That night, Rainbow left. No goodbye, no bags, just the clothes on her back and a heart that pulsed with colors no one ever wanted. She walked for miles through alleys, fields, forgotten train stations, until she saw the glowing skyline of City Hue. Surely, she thought, a place so big must have room for someone like her. She was wrong. People stared at her glow like she was a glitch in their world. Shopkeepers told her to leave. Kids pointed. Adults muttered words like mutant and broken. At one point, someone stole her blanket while she slept behind a dumpster. By the end of the week, Rainbow had stopped glowing. Not because she lost her powers, but because she didn't want to be seen anymore. Eventually, she wandered into the forest beyond the city. There were no roads, no eyes, just silence. And for the first time in her life, that silence felt safe. She built a shelter from branches, ate wild berries, learned to listen to the wind instead of voices. Her colors slowly returned, softly, like petals blooming again. It was here, among moss and moonlight, that Rainbow saw something that changed everything. A figure moved through the trees. Not an animal, not a person. It was draining color, literally. It stepped close to a bright yellow flower, held out its hand, and the flower turned to ash. Then it walked to a sleeping squirrel, orange, and stole its hue. The creature left behind husks, colorless, emotionless. Rainbow's chest burned. "No," she whispered, "you don't get to do that." She didn't move. Rainbow stayed hidden in the thicket, watching the figure glide silently between trees like a living shadow. Its body shimmered with stolen color, an unnatural shine, like paint swirled in oil, and his face was masked, void of eyes or mouth, but somehow grinning. She could hear her heartbeat thumping in her ears. She had never seen anything like it. The creature stopped again, this time before a deer grazing under a moonbeam, a beautiful creature with patches of gold and white. One swipe like a magician's cruel trick, and the deer collapsed in a gray heap, lifeless, soulless. The forest grew colder. Rainbow gripped a branch beside her, jaw clenched. No more, she whispered to herself. As she stepped out, the creature paused. It turned slowly, tilting its head like a curious dog. Who are you? Rainbow demanded, trying to steady her shaking voice. Why are you doing this? The creature didn't speak. Instead, it stretched out one spindly arm toward her, palm glowing with a misty blue aura. Rainbow flinched. But when the glow hit her, it didn't work. She was still there, still radiant, still rainbow. The creature jerked back, confused. It tried again, stronger this time. A beam of dull energy shot toward her chest, but instead of dimming her, it ricocheted like light off a mirror. Rainbow stepped forward. I don't know what you are, she said, but you won't erase me. She raised her hands, and for the first time in her life, they shined. The glow burst from her palms like wildfire, pure light, refracted through every spectrum. It wasn't just color, it was emotion, and love, resilience. It wasn't violent, but it was powerful. The forest lit up in pulses of red, gold, aqua, violet. Even the trees swayed in harmony. The creature staggered, the mask it wore beginning to crack. It hissed, not a voice, but a sound like static. It stumbled backward as the colors surrounded it, burning away the stolen hues trapped in its body. And then it fled back into the shadows, leaving behind a trail of wilted gray that quickly rebloomed with color wherever Rainbow stepped. She fell to her knees, exhausted. Her hands were still glowing, softer now, like candlelight. She had felt something ignite inside her, not just power, but purpose. She thought of that deer, the flower, the children back at the school, herself. All of them had something stolen. But unlike her parents, unlike the headmaster, unlike the city, this creature didn't reject color because it hated it. It wanted it. It fed off it. It feared what it couldn't steal. And that made her something new. The next morning, she walked into the city, no clue, no shadows. She glowed in broad daylight, bright, radiant, proud. People stared again. Some still whispered, but others paused. Children pointed, not in mockery, but awe. That's her, someone murmured, the one from the forest. She saved the trees, another said. She brought color back to the South Path. The Rainbow didn't stop to explain. Instead, she walked to the school. Her school. The courtyard was empty, but she stepped right to the center where she once knelt in shame. She raised her arms and released a burst of color. The gray walls cracked, the dull flag rippled into hues of unity. The stone ground glowed like stained glass. And when the students came running out, eyes wide with wonder, she smiled. She didn't say, I told you so. She simply said, hi. The school bell rang out, a long, echoing tone that bounced off the newly rainbow-tinted walls. Dozens of students spilled into the courtyard. At first, they froze. Most of them remembered Rainbow. They remembered the girl who used to sit at the far table in the cafeteria, the one who wasn't allowed to join the color group projects, the one they laughed at when she tripped in the hallway. Now she stood in the center of the courtyard like a living miracle, hair glowing like sunlight through a prism, eyes filled with calm, hands no longer trembling, but extended in peace. One student stepped forward, a boy with a bright orange hoodie, the same boy who once called her the walking art accident. You came back, he said, uncertain. Rainbow nodded. Only for a moment. The headmaster pushed through the crowd. His tie was crooked. His eyes, usually hard and calculating, were full of disbelief. You? What did you do to the school? I restored it, she said simply. He frowned. You don't belong here. You're right, she replied. I belong somewhere bigger now. The headmaster clenched his fists. Your powers? Your colors? This display? It's inappropriate. The children behind him murmured. But then the orange hoodie boy stepped forward again. No, it's inspiring. Others nodded. Someone clapped. And another, until the entire courtyard echoed with applause. Rainbow blinked in surprise. She had never been applauded for existing before. Later that day, she walked back to the edge of the forest, alone again, but no longer lonely. She thought of the creature, the color thief. It was still out there, somewhere. She could feel it, a tremble in the wind, a pulse in the shadows, something watching her. She turned to the trees. "I'm not afraid of you," she said aloud. Silent. Then a whisper, not in words, but the hum, a song of sorrow. And suddenly she understood. That night she dreamed. She stood in the center of an empty field, her body flickering like a torch in the dark. And then she saw it, the creature, but it wasn't stealing color this time. I was sobbing. It had no voice, no eyes, but its body shook as if it carried centuries of grief. Rainbow stepped closer. "Why?" she asked. The creature held up a broken shard of glass, reflecting her own face. "I was like you once," a voice said, not spoken, but felt. "I wanted to shine, but the world took that away, so I took theirs." Rainbow's heart twisted. "You don't have to anymore," she said. "You can heal." The next morning, she followed the feeling, deep into the woods, to a cave she'd never seen before, gray, cold, silent. Inside, walls were scorched with lost colors. Symbols etched into stone told stories of others beings once radiant, who had become twisted from isolation, rejection, pain. She knelt in the center and opened her hands. This time, her light didn't blaze. It glowed, a warm pulse, a heartbeat of color. The shadows melted, and from the far end of the cave, the creature emerged. Cautious, trembling, not a villain, not a monster, just another child who had been left behind too long. Rainbow walked toward it. No fear, no judgment. She placed her hand on its mask, and it crumbled gently into dust. Underneath was a face, just like hers, tired, scared, but still alive. She smiled. "Let's go home." They walked out of the cave together, Rainbow and the creature whose name had long been forgotten. It no longer moved like a thief in the dark. It moved like someone finally waking up from a nightmare. And Rainbow didn't lead the way like a hero. She simply walked beside it. For the first time in its life, the creature wasn't alone. They returned to the city. As they approached, people stopped in the streets, unsure of what they were seeing. Rainbow, now glowing more gently than ever, radiant but calm, and beside her, a tall, skeletal figure with faded skin and hesitant steps. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some stepped back in fear, some whispered, but no one moved to attack. Not after what Rainbow had done. A little girl tugged her mother's sleeve. "Is that the monster?" Rainbow turned, smiling gently. "No," she said, "he's not." The creature, startled, tried to shrink away from the attention, but Rainbow placed a hand on its shoulder. "You're not what they called you. You're what you choose to become." It blinked at her, soft blue light returning to its eyes like forgotten stars relighting. They reached the school again. This time, no applause greeted her, just silence. The headmaster was waiting, his arms folded, his face unreadable. "You returned with that," he said, nodding toward a former color thief. "He was never the villain," Rainbow replied. "He was the result of a world that threw him away." The headmaster narrowed his eyes. "He drained the city's gardens. He made the rivers gray." "He was starving," she said simply, "like I once was. You remember, don't you?" The headmaster flinched. Rainbow stepped forward, her voice quiet but clear. "You taught me shame. He taught me forgiveness." She turned to the gathered students, teachers, strangers in the street. "Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing love when hate is easy." She offered the creature her hand. Slowly it reached out, placing its fragile fingers in hers. The moment they touched, a pulse of color spread between them. Not explosive, not blinding, just warm, real. Every flower that had ever turned gray bloomed again. Every heart that had been hardened softened, if only a little. And in that moment, even the headmaster looked away. A shame that time passed. The creature found a name again, Hugh. Not a title, not a label. Just, he stayed near the forest, tending to flowers and teaching kids about light and shadow, creation and reflection. Rainbow returned to the edge of the city, not to hide, but to watch, to protect. Sometimes people would visit her. Sometimes they'd bring apologies. Other times they'd just sit beside her in silence and let her light fall across their shoulders. She never asked for praise. She never held a grudge. She only asked one question: "What color are you hiding?" And when they answered, she always smiled. The city changed. Not overnight, but slowly, softly, just like rainbows like. Where once the skyline was gray and functional, murals began to appear, first in alleyways, then across rooftops, and finally on the tallest buildings. Colors returned, not just to the walls, but to the people. Children laughed louder, artists painted freely, strangers stopped to help one another, even if just for a moment. People had seen something extraordinary, and it reminded them of something deeply ordinary: the need to be seen, the right to be different, the courage to forgive. Rainbow never built a castle, never became a queen, never ruled anything, but everywhere she went, things grew. Not because she planted seeds, but because she gave people permission to do so themselves. You became the quiet keeper of the wilds, the former thief, now a guardian. He spoke little, but listened well. His hands, once used to steal color, now guided new growth. And when children wandered into his woods, he showed them how to care for what they didn't understand. One day, Rainbow visited him under a sky that pulsed with golden clouds. "You're still glowing," Hugh said with a gentle smile. Rainbow chuckled. "So are you." They sat together in the quiet. No crowds, no judgment, just two souls once discarded, now surrounded by blossoms. Back in the city, the headmaster stood before a new class of students. The wall behind him was painted in radiant hues. At its center was a mural of Rainbow holding a broken mask and handing it to a small child with unsure eyes. He cleared his throat. "Today's lesson," he began, "is about perception and what we miss when we stop seeing people as people." For once, he didn't speak like he was right. He spoke like someone who had learned. Rainbow never met her birth parents again. She didn't need to, because she had become something far greater than what they ever imagined. She was living proof that being different was not a flaw, it was a flame. And while the world may try to dim that light, it only takes one person to refuse to go dark. She stood on the same hill where she was once abandoned and looked at the city she'd helped change. Birds flew above in dazzling patterns. Children waved from rooftops, and the wind carried laughter, not fear. She smiled, softly, content, whole. "Let there be color," she whispered, and the world listened.